Howdy, folks. This video is from a show I recently did on Cameron Bertuzzi's channel, Capturing Christianity. If you like it, do all the YouTube things to let YouTube know to show the video to others. Be sure to like, comment, and share the video. And I am trying to grow my channel, so be sure and subscribe and hit the bell notification. Don't forget to check out Capturing Christianity and support the work that Cameron is doing there. Hope you enjoy this.
Here is my question on NDEs. I will assert that NDEs shouldn't really be used as evidence for the afterlife, for disconnected consciousness, or really much of anything due to what I'm going to call the immature level of research. And here by immature, I do not mean childlike. I only mean that there's not sufficient research at this time. A 1996 article published in the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine, succinctly named Near-Death Experiences, concluded that NDEs deserve some serious research, but then ends on the pessimistic note that, quote, study of life at its last limits may tell us more about ourselves and our lives than it does about our death. Well, in the subsequent 24 years, how much progress was made into the study of NDEs? Well, evidently not as much as we would like. The 2020 article published as an opinion piece in Trends of Cognitive Sciences titled Near-Death Experience as a Probe to Explore Disconnected Consciousness concludes that at present, we have a limited understanding of NDE phenomenon, and it adds that same kind of pessimistic note. Like any other episode of Disconnected Consciousnesses, classical NDEs are challenging for research. So my question is this, Jimmy, do you think that the data that we have now is sufficient to come to any kind of conclusion? And do you expect that if we were able to perform like double-blind, placebo-controlled experiments about NDEs, would we find anything interesting that you think like would maybe be unexpected?
In terms of the basic question, now, in any developing field of inquiry in science, you're absolutely right. There is a kind of preliminary stage where not much is known about the phenomenon under investigation, and we don't want to draw super firm conclusions during that phase of research. You want to wait and see what further data collection is going to reveal. There were some preliminary research done on near-death experiences throughout much of the 20th century, but it didn't really crystallize until 1975 with the release of Raymond Moody's book, Life After Life. That's what really kicked off the near-death experience research. And in the 50 years now, since that book came out, we've collected a lot of near-death data. There are challenges, you're quite correct, in doing research on it, like randomized double-blind controlled experiments are basically impossible with near-death experiences for ethical reasons, because you can't kill somebody to find out what kind of near-death experience they're going to have. You can't employ those kind of controls. And so we have a limited set of research tools, but that's expanding. And there have been some, like, for example, studies like the AWARE study and the AWARE-2 study that have tried to, go into the field and do research as quickly as possible, even in the hospital. Like, one of the planned elements of this is they want, because people who experience NDEs frequently will have a phenomenon known as autoscopy, which is where you see yourself from an outside perspective. And they frequently report looking down from the room of the hospital where the technicians and doctors are trying to restart their heart and report what they see. Well, as part of what's called the AWARE study, which stands for like awareness during recitation, or something like that, they thought, let's put iPads up on ledges high in the room and have them display images. And then we can ask the people if they had autoscopy looking down on themselves, did you notice any images on the iPads? And that could serve as a source of veridical information. Unfortunately, the way the study has worked, they got very few people who ended up surviving their heart attack and who reported autoscopy and so forth. So the data set there is not robust enough to really draw any conclusions on that particular issue. But I think it's a fascinating idea for how to apply new research tools to this area. When it comes to the phenomenon as a whole, we've just got a lot of evidence for it now. And I think that even though we are still at a fairly early stage of research. We are 50 years into it, and we have numerous case reports that contain not just interesting information, but specifically veridical information the participants did not know before they had their heart attack or other clinical death experience. They came back knowing it, and it turned out to be true. And there's no plausible way that they could have learned about it while they were clinically dead. There's a recent book, if you're interested in this, it's by a group of European researchers, including the lead author is Titus Rivas. The book is called The Self Does Not Die. And what it does is it contains over 100 cases of NDEs where veridical information was retrieved and there's an independent witness. So it's not simply someone reporting it. There's someone else who was there and able to, like, for example, observe the experience and what the person was doing in the hospital. So you have some independent validation of the fact this person had no way of coming up with this information. To give just one example, and I have numerous others that I could give, but to give just one example, there is one veridical case where the person dies, he has his heart attack, his heart stops, he does have autoscopy, so he's looking down on himself from a higher up perspective, and he sees the doctors working on him. And he saw what looked to him like one doctor flapping his arms like a chicken. And he didn't know what is with this. Why is this doctor flapping his arms like a chicken? That's not a standard medical procedure. Well, they get his heart restarted, and then he shares his experience. And he talks to the doctor, and the doctor actually gets indignant and tells him, well, at least I brought you back. Well, it turned out that this which is not always, it's actually funny. In some of these cases, I'm aware of doctors and nurses who have gotten socked in the nose for bringing people back. They were having such a great time on the other side, they didn't want to come back. But it turns out that this particular doctor was a Japanese gentleman, and he, in the surgical theater, would keep his hands close to his chest in order to not get them contaminated by touching unsanitized objects. And what he would do, this was just his personal quirk, is he would point with his elbows to different pieces of equipment to tell the nurses what to get. And so it turns out that, yeah, this guy flapping his arms, looking kind of like a chicken in the surgical theater, was exactly what this guy did. That was a valid perception that the experiencer, who was clinically dead at the time, had no natural way of seeing. And when you read case after case, like I said, this book, The Self Does Not Die, contains more than 100 of these cases. I think even though we're not at 5 sigma level yet, to use a statistical term that's considered the gold threshold, the gold standard in physics, I think we have very substantial reason to think that NDEs do point to an afterlife. And I expect that further research in this area is likely to cause that evidence to continue to mount.
Yeah, I guess if I just can say a few things, I guess first, thank you for the generous and long answer. I guess second, I certainly am impressed by stories like that. But I guess I just have worries for like a few different reasons. There's been, various prophecies throughout history that we found out were made after the fact. And sometimes I worry that these NDE stories are embellished after the fact, or I saw you waving your arms around turned into I saw you flapping your arms like a chicken, which is maybe a little bit, things like that. I also worry about cases like the famous The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven case. There was that book, and like the kid who died and went to heaven and came back and allegedly told his father all these stories about heaven. When the kid got old enough,
Kevin Malarkey.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, you know more about this than I do, but I guess I just worry about things like that. And I'm an engineer by education, so I'm a little bit of like a in God we trust, all others must bring data. So until I see the data on NDEs, I'm kind of thinking that I ought to remain agnostic. I don't know if you think that's kind of unreasonable, or that's just kind of I guess that's where I'm at, if that makes sense.
Okay, well, no, I mean, what status you have, whether you're a disbeliever, a believer, or an agnostic, is going to be rationally based on what evidence you've seen. And if based on the evidence you've seen thus far, you're in the agnostic category, I think that's fine. I also think you raise legitimate concerns that need to be taken into account in doing research in this area. Elaboration